Okay, I'm doing here, I'm going to focus primarily in this little sketch. I'm going to go through the steps here, drawing in the computer, of course, and just taking and feeling. First, I'm going to feeling the action. I'm going to focus primarily on elements of the squish and stretch. Well, at the same time, it's the basic procedure of constructing, going from gesture. I'm really feeling the flow. Now, when I do this, what I'm doing, you can see, following the cursor. See, I'm actually, even if I don't put lines down, I'm going through and feeling the flow of how it forms. So I'm, in a sense, I'm really going through the figure with the cursor. And I do a lot of drawing in the air, so you can see me moving things around without actually putting any lines down. Now, I do exactly the same thing when I'm working with a pencil. So this is just a beginning stage. I'm trying to feel where the forms are, just feeling the action. So that's basically step one. Now, the next step in the process is I go through and I construct. And by constructing, I'm talking about dealing with very, very simple volumes. Even though I'm going to carry the drawing fairly far, at least in parts. And so I'm just visualizing where the proportions are. I'm thinking of the neck is a cylinder fitting into the rib cage. Now, I'm going through, I'm really drawing, I'm trying to draw the volume. So I'm going from one side of the form to the other. So and this is one of those things that probably the closest I come to any kind of a rule thing is that when you draw one fragment of a form, you draw it as if you were drawing the whole form. So here, in fact, I am, even though I can't necessarily see all that. Then now I'm focusing on how that fits into the general pelvic area. So again, this is just a very simple volume. There's nothing particularly complicated about this. And at the same time, as I'm doing this, I'm indicating where the corner of the pelvis is. So I'm dealing with the symmetry. It's like on the upper part here, I was thinking of the bottom of the rib cage, thoracic arch, bottom of the 10th rib. Okay. So I'm just going from one side to the other. Now, come down, I'm focusing on the legs. First, the legs are just simply cylinder type forms that taking and coming through. I visualize the end. Again, it's just a simple cylinder. So at this point, there's very little anatomy. It's more a placement of large, simple forms. In that sense, this is no different than if you were drawing from a mannequin, or what we in the animation industry, you're very dealing with. When I was a student, instructors talked about it as synthetic form. In other words, it's a created form. It's not, we're not copying what they do. And I haven't used that term in quite a while. But the idea is synthetic form. So now, when I come out dealing with the shoulders, coming out, and I'm starting with the clavicle, and I'm coming through and thinking about where it's going. And then I take the whole shoulder area, the scapula as it comes in, how we then are pulling this down, the arm going down, going in, going over the surface, coming down. And as I approach this, I basically thinking is that I put something down, so I've got something to correct. And in a way, the students, one of the problems with students when they're working is that they tend to think that they have to make every line perfect. Well, the old masters didn't do that. And unless you're going to sit there and copy something for 30 hours, your chances are you're not going to. But that's not a practical way of working. Now, okay, now I've got the essential things built up. I indicate the breasts. Notice these are added on top. I didn't start out with drawing the breasts. They're building on top. Now, what I want to foam, what we have here is a situation where we've got the form going down. Now, this is like one of the exercises I do all the time, talking about, like, say, a sack of potatoes or a beanbag, and where we feel the shifting of the form. Okay, that's what's going on now. So I need to take and really reinforce that. So now, in doing that, I'll take, and I want to really think about, this is the place where it happens right here. Let's get in fairly tight, and we can look at that. And now, I'm thinking of the whole volume here, and this is taking and coming down. We're pushing in, and it's coming across. So as I'm drawing this, I'm thinking this is a surface that we're coming across over, and at the same time, I'm thinking that this is a compression pushing down. So we could feel forms coming out from behind, coming through, and the pelvis area is pushing in, so we can see that this is taking and going the opposite direction. Let's even get in tighter here so we can take and see more clearly what I'm talking about here. So now we get one form that's coming down, and we're pushing in, coming around. This is coming around from behind, and we're compressing. So this is like you feel this is pushing in, and since we have the pelvis is right here, the end of the iliac crest. Well, these forms now here are compressing. We feel the roundness. So, but as we come across with this now, we want to feel that this is taking and pulling from the other side already. So you're talking about the symmetry going across. So as I pull from here, I want to feel the corner. And this is pulling across this way. And so we feel, and this is also a plane that is going down. So I'm taking and thinking, pushing down, and that's where I'm using just basically simple modeling tone now. And we can feel the fold pulling through. So everything I'm doing now here, you can see, is dealing with how forms compress. Now we're feeling the stretching on the other side. See, this is coming out from behind. You can feel there's a bit of gravity involved in here. You can feel this pulling down, coming through the navel here. This surface, this is a rounded surface. So you can feel, so I'm just taking and going over that surface with the form. Now we still have up here, as we come into here, we get still more compression. So you can see the effect now that's taking place here. We're getting all these forms compressing. And I'm emphasizing now, see, the lines that I'm building on are the simple volumes, one fitting into another. So these are construction that are building from the basic simple volumes that we start with. And here you can see where we're turning like this. Well, we're going to feel the forms coming around the corner. So I'm pushing and going over that surface going down. And we would feel the buttocks going down behind. It's coming through. And so this surface here now, as that cylinder is going back in, we think about the way the forms now here are fitting into this. See, I'm going over. This is like I'm actually visualizing that these lines are still part of that cylinder as I'm going over the surface. And we can feel the forms coming down. Now, I was asked in one of my Academy chats, well, how do you get to the point where you can take and draw all those parallel lines? Well, it's just mileage. It's really mileage. You have to take and be careful. You notice I'm not really drawing fast. As I'm doing the drawings, I'm constantly just visualizing important. I also keep one, which you can't see, but I keep one finger down on the surface of the computer screen. Now that gives me a bridge that I can use as like a lever, so I can take and go through. So now these forms, we're going over the surface. So if we just let's just for a second here take and go back through some of the steps here. So that's where we began. It was just a very, very, very simple movement. Then coming in and constructing it, and now taking and starting to build the forms. So each level, now like for instance, if we go into the shoulder area here. Okay, the first part of this is to visualize that the shoulder is a cylinder. It's a cylinder. We're going around the end. And so as I'm doing this, I'm constantly thinking about where the deltoid is attaching back here in that curve of the clavicle. And so there's a top plane here. So as I'm going around the form, and we come over, and we feel the pushing down, going in. So notice here now notice the outside contour hasn't changed. It's the interior form that I'm pulling into from that contour. Okay, and I would take the pectoralis muscles pulling off of the chest, going over to the arm. And now this becomes a section of a cylinder. So I'm just going over that surface, going down. And we feel the forms coming in. We're pushing the sides down as I go through this. So you're building volumes one on top of the other. So this is the process. So as I take and, for instance, working into the biceps here, see, the outside shape has not changed. It's a simple line. But now I pull into the interior of that, and I'm coming in. And this is where often the students get lost, is that they take and they look at muscles, they look at the bumps, and pretty soon that all they've got is a lot of lumps working on the drawing. And here I'm coming back and adding a little bit more volume, pulling the latissimus dorsi and the teres major from behind. So I'm just adding, I'm building these forms, and I'm conscious, very, very conscious of how one form overlaps. But I'm, again, I hate to be repeating this so much, but notice that the contour has not changed. Now, that doesn't mean I don't. So now, like for instance, here, I'm going to change the contour. I'm going to take and get much wider, but I'm still building on the simple lines that we've got going, thinking of coming across where the wrist is, pulling through. So we're building this drawing. And the breast, for instance, now we would take, this is fitting into the breast. The breast now is coming from around on the side. Now I take this into the consideration of the volume now. Coming through, we're going over. Feel this coming down and going out, over. Notice like I'm doing that like a contour map as a way of taking and explaining and discovering which way the forms are actually going. Now, so in sense drawing using a contour lines, which are quite different in meaning from when I was a student to what most people think of today, is today we're discussing outside contours. I don't deal with that. I create the outside contour. I'm not copying the outside contour. So at this point we have a rough beginning. We spent 15 minutes here taking and doing this. So where I would go from this, now I can take, and there's several different things I can do on the computer. I can ghost down a lot of what I've been doing. I'll take and reduce all this stuff down a little bit. And this, what I do on paper is I take and essentially do the same thing by taking and drawing very, very lightly to begin with. So all of these steps now that I'm going through in the drawing have been reduced down a little bit. So now I'm going to take and go in and draw a little bit darker. As I'm going to take and build on top of this, give a little bit more tone. I'm going to take and start out with a little bit finer brush so I can get a little bit tighter, and I want to get in very, very close now to take and show you actually what I'm really thinking, because we began the ideas that we began here is the idea of compression. So now as I come through and I start to I want to feel this is coming down, and I'm compressing the line, and you can feel it's coming out from behind. And so as we do this, then we're taking and feeling one form. See the way it looks at this point now, it's like a cylinder, just a very, very, very simple cylinder. And I'm coming out from now behind, coming out. I want to pull, there's a corner here. So I want to pushing the corner, feel the tone going down, and I would take and build this form now. I would be taking and coming all the way around, working with the form, building it up, coming out, and start to feel as we, with some of these other forms here now, we'll take and come over. I want to feel there's a compression going both ways. We got this coming up, this is going behind, we're coming through, feeling the overlapping. These planes come around. I would take and be very, very, very conscious of where the corners of the pelvis are, feeling form. So we work over these forms, constantly going over the surface. Now, the program, by the way, that I don't think I mentioned, I'm working on Manga 5, which is primarily a comic book program. And now this is pushing down. It actually, I just started using this about a week ago, and I'm finding that it is I prefer to working with Sketchbook Pro. It's actually it's much more responsive. I can take and let's take and even go down in tighter, and I want to get darker, so we can really feel and actually even work into a different type of a brush here. And to here. Now what I'm going to do is to give this will be actually have more of a texture quality to it. See how sharp. Now I'm going to take that texture and start pulling in. So you're feeling it's like charcoal. And I can go over go through. Now this is the same kind of sensibility I would be bringing into the drawing, working on paper. I essentially would not be, the only difference is I wouldn't be focusing so much on just one little area. I would be taking and working the whole drawing up, bringing up each area so that it's rebuilding on the whole. But here the emphasis is I'm trying to emphasize this compression so that on the other side then, let's go down in sides here a little bit. See, now I'm coming in, I want to feel the stretching coming across. And really work with the corner as we're coming through. And so we'll be pulling into so what we're getting is definitely a very charcoalish type of look, although it's not called charcoal. It's actually a inking brush form that I'm working with. So going over, constantly going over the surface. Now you can see how extreme already this is. I've really forced this whole action. Well, let's just take and get down smaller so you can see the effect of the whole thing. So now we're getting an extreme compression and we're really starting to feel the stretch. I'm making the torso push down and then we start going over and pulling around on a thing. But everything has to is dealing with the idea that you're fitting one form, fitting into another form. And that's what we're dealing with right here. You're feeling one form fitting into another. So the simple mechanics of a squash and stretch idea is carried through into this part. Okay, this is fairly long here for just a short little demonstration. Okay, and I'm going to be putting out a series of these things, hopefully at least weekly.